Welcome to this video. We will be discussing the Wolverhampton Taxi Knowledge Test about safeguarding vulnerable passengers, specifically safeguarding children and vulnerable adults. We'll talk about what safeguarding is, the key terminology you will be using, and what you need to do in your test to get the best answers to pass. The original Wolverhampton Knowledge Test has 28 questions, and you need 21 correct answers. Let's get started. Your first lesson is about finding out about vulnerable passengers. This is done by understanding the indicators of risk. You need to look up these things, identify the source, sources of advice, and ways of reporting these concerns to people, and understand the roles and responsibilities in relation to the personal safety and security of all passengers. This is vital because of the criminal elements. Having researched these things, you should know that your job is to see the risks, understand them, and report them. That's what the police expect you to do. It's called whistleblowing. To help you build your skills, we will look at different scenarios. Scenario number 1. You know that one of your colleagues regularly picks up a 14-year-old girl from a children's home and takes her to a local hotel. What would you do? Do not confront the taxi driver or your colleague. Instead, tell the police or the multi-agency safeguarding hub. If you know there's a 14-year-old girl going to a local hotel, a lot of alarm bells should go off for you. You should protect this child. That is your responsibility as a professional and as an adult. Scenario number 2. You pick up a man and a woman from a local restaurant. As they get into your car, the man is shouting at the woman who's crying. During the drive to her home address, the man slaps the woman in the face. What would you do? The right thing to do would be to ask for permission. You do not interfere. You ask for permission. Say to the woman, "Excuse me, do you need my help?" And then she could say, "No, thank you, I am fine." So do not get involved, but definitely take a description like how close they were and what they were doing when you picked them up, what happened when you dropped them off. Then report it to the police and let the police investigate. You're not the investigator. You're a taxi driver, a professional. Scenario number 3. You work in the city center and often pick up passengers from pubs and clubs. You notice that at weekends there are often a large number of young people coming out of a nightclub who appear to be drunk and underage. As you arrive to pick up your passenger, you see a young girl leaving the premises. The girl appears to be about 14 or 15 years old and is very drunk. She is with 3 much older men, and the group is walking towards your car. What would you do? The best thing to do would be to call the police or ask the girl if she needs help. So, you're asking for permission and you're reporting it. Remember this. Don't get involved. Don't refuse to take them. Don't tell them or create a situation that could lead to a confrontation, because that's not your job. You're not professionally trained to confront people. That's the job of the police. And you never know this girl. It could be her uncle, it could be her family, but she's still young and drunk, so you have to report it. These are the ideas you have to go through. Scenario number 4. An elderly lady approaches your taxi at the local supermarket. She has a lot of luggage and a walking stick. She seems to be in pain when she walks. What would you do? You are responsible for getting her luggage, picking it up, putting it in the bag, and opening the car door. Close the door. Drive her to a destination. Get her luggage out of the car, walk her to the front door, and open the door for her. Do not go into a house when you drop her off, even if she asks you to. Say, "I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to go inside the house." This is because you do not know what's in the house. You might go into the house and she might start screaming. You could take her into the house. There might be someone inside. Leave her outside the house. Go back to your taxi. Get on with your work. Throughout all of this, you should understand your responsibilities, such as duty of care. Make sure vulnerable people are safe. Duty to disclose information if you are concerned about abuse or neglect. Treating all passengers with dignity and respect. Whistleblowing. Other drivers, other services, club staff. Be responsible and vigilant because criminals are using taxis to avoid prosecution. That's what the police have discovered, and without your help, they'll keep doing it. And if you do not report it, the police won't know. they cannot do anything. It's your responsibility. So we need to be aware that some people are being harmed by the abuse of others. And when that happens, we need to take action. Safeguarding is everybody's business and needs to be understood. So this would come up again and again in your examinations. Let's talk about the different types of abuse. Physical abuse. Physical abuse is like hitting someone. Psychological or emotional abuse, like telling someone they're not good enough or telling yourself that you are not good enough. Organizational, like when a passenger gets into your car and you drive them somewhere else. They get out of your car, get into another car or taxi and drive away. They are organized, they are being trafficked. Watch it and report it. Self neglect. This abuse can happen to you. You should make sure you stay positive. Modern slavery, like they've just arrived in the UK for a better life and their passport has been taken away. Now they can't leave. Financial or material abuse. The money is not in their hands, it's in someone else's hands, and the money is only used when it is needed. As you can see, one person is very well dressed, they could be wearing a suit, and another person is dirty and filthy, which should also set off your alarm bells. Discriminatory. Discriminatory abuse is where you discriminate against them because they're wearing a hijab or their skin is white or brown, etc. Neglect and omission. For example, you see a person complaining about being hungry or in pain, but the other person does not listen. Report this as it could be a deeper issue that you can uncover and help the child, person, or vulnerable adult. Domestic violence. We just looked at this in the scenarios. A man or a woman strikes a man or a woman. That's domestic violence and you need to report it. Here are some indicators that, if you see them, should raise concerns about children under 18, relationships with older men or women, concern that the young person is sexually active, disengagement from family, friends, or work, not attending school, missing from home, spending more time on social networking sites, experimenting with drugs or alcohol. If you smell or see drugs in your car, report it. Children with physical injuries. If a child gets into your car and has a bruise on their arm, report it. Being secretive. If they are being secretive and not talking, report it. Involved in abusive behavior. They swear or they are being racially abusive. They may just be crying out for help and you need to report it. Unexplained mobiles or credit. These kids have 2 or 3 phones. Report this. Taking lifts in different cars. If you drop a child off in a field and they get into another car and drive away, report it. Sending or receiving inappropriate pictures. If you know they are receiving inappropriate images, report it. If you know a child should be at school but they are in your taxi, report it. These reports would be useful. How are these young people addressed? Because they are vulnerable, befriended by the perpetrator. The grooming process, where they are given food, sweets, money, blackmail, or threats. Isolation from support. These perpetrators are identified by the following: individuals who control the adult industry, drug dealers with links to violent crime, groups of men who exploit them for their own gratification, men who supply young people to others for fornication, female offenders, other young people. These are big things you have to deal with, and as a professional driver, you need to know what's going on. Now let's look at the indicators of concern for adults aged 18 and over. Let's talk about disabled adults who may have mental illnesses such as Alzheimer, dementia, or physical disabilities, and let's understand how they might be abused. Being bullied. So, if you see them and you know they have a mental illness and they are being coerced or bullied, report it. Having decisions made for them all the time. All the decisions are being made for them. There may be some underlying problems. Preferences ignored. Please report it if their choices are ignored or they are forced to do something against their will, being verbally abused or put down. Like being told they're not good enough, etc. That's bad. Report it. Physical injuries, like bruises or cuts, being badly dressed or unclean. Passenger is missing everyday items such as shoes. Report this. Someone else checks the money. If a passenger gets into your car and the other passenger is very well dressed and the other one is very dirty, report it. struggling to look after themselves. These reports would help that person and get the appropriate agencies to help that person. Let's talk about what she classifies as sexual assault. Sexual assault is when a person intentionally touches another person without reasonable belief that they have consented. Touching includes any physical contact, whether it is with a part of the body or something else, or through clothing. This touching is sexual assault. Next, let's understand what sexual exploitation is. Young people are given something in return for engaging in sexual activity. Perpetrators have power over victims because of their age, gender, intellect, physical strength, and economic or other resources. In the worst cases, violence, coercion, and intimidation are common, such as an older man showing a young girl money, status, or things to make her a victim. Boys and young men can be victims as well as girls or young women. Other terms include coercion, forcing someone to do something they don't want to do, intimidation. Intimidation means telling them, I'm going to make you do this violent thing to make them do what you want them to do. Boys and young men can be victims as well as girls and young women. Let's see what is being done to stop this. Like this video, professionals and partners are being trained to spot the signs of exploitation. Young people are warned about the risks. Young people are informed through education programs for them. Concerns referred to the police or social services are thoroughly investigated. Information is passed to the police to help disrupt activities and prosecute offenders. Working with the police. So, working with the police is very important to stop these crimes. How might this test or its preparation affect you? Concerns about young people in your vehicle. Concerns about places or venues where you drop young people off. Concerns about adults paying for young people's taxi fares. Concerns about young people talking in your vehicle. You should be concerned about all of these things because safeguarding is everyone's responsibility. You can also fulfill this responsibility by doing the following: being aware of risk indicators. Be aware of young people or adults you think may be at risk. Be aware of addresses where you take young people or adults. Pass on any information or concerns you have. What to do if you notice a risk indicator or are concerned about a passenger. Call 999 if there is an imminent risk of harm or assault. If you are concerned about a child, contact Children and Families Direct on 0115 876 4800. If you are concerned about an adult, contact Health and Care Point on 0300 300 33330 or out of hours on 115 876 1000. Make and keep a record of your concerns, what you have done, and why. For further advice, contact John Davis on 0115 876 1358. There is also MASH, the Multiple Agent Safeguarding Hub. MASH can do things a lot quicker than the police. And when it comes to these issues, minutes or half an hour could be the difference between a terrible situation and someone being saved. But while you're doing all these things, you should also follow good safety practice. The most important thing is to keep a record of the incident and anything else you notice. Check at the point of booking if there are any vulnerability issues so that you can prepare for the trip in the right way. Ask the booking agent if an escort is required for the vulnerable passenger and if they will provide one. Tell your checkpoint or keep a record of the time you picked up the vulnerable passenger, the time and place you dropped them off, and whether there were any incidents or anything significant on the journey. If you refuse to pick up a passenger, tell someone that you cannot pick them up so they can deal with the person in another way. For example, hospital staff, family, security at a club or pub. Be professional, don't be overly friendly, don't discuss personal or intimate matters, and don't exchange personal contact information such as passengers' phone numbers or Facebook addresses. Avoid swearing or aggressive behavior. Do not touch passengers. Never accept an offer of sexual favors in lieu of payment. Wear your council-issued driver's badge in a prominent place. Explain to passengers if you use a central locking system. Don't just put it on without explaining. Don't assume your passenger needs help. Always ask. Never follow a passenger into a house. Ask before shortening a journey by leaving the main road or using isolated country roads. Explain and give the passenger or person booking a choice of routes. Never set off with a passenger without a specific destination. Never duplicate a booking even if the passengers are traveling in a similar direction. You may pose a threat or risk to the other passenger. If you think the passenger is frightened, offer to call the central office and tell them you have a named passenger with you, giving the address and approximate time of arrival. This will reassure the person that they are safe and that someone is monitoring the journey. As with all professions, if you're concerned about the behavior of another driver, report your concerns to your operator or the relevant authority. Organizations should have a senior safety officer. This person should be able to advise colleagues on how to deal with vulnerable passengers and any incidents that may arise. Finally, you should always keep a record of any incidents or situations you are unhappy about. This should include what happened and what you did to keep yourself and your passengers safe. And remember, we need to be aware that some people are harmed by the abuse of others. When this happens, we need to take action. Now, you should be able to understand the following points. Understand the need to protect vulnerable adults, young people, and children. Identify possible victims of abuse and exploitation by understanding indicators of risk. Identify sources of advice and ways of reporting concerns. Understand their roles and responsibilities in relation to personal safety. That concludes this video. Please leave a like and subscribe to our channel.